Growing up, I was surrounded by billionaires, multimillionaires, as well as the poorest of the poor. And with this experience, I can confidently tell us here today the importance of looking poor. We're going to break these into two verticals: the importance of looking poor and how it saves us money, and then how it makes us money. If we ask ourselves, does it cost a lot of money to look poor? The obvious answer is probably not. Can you spend a lot of money and still look poor? Of course, yes. That is just the world we live in. Typically speaking, looking poor sounds basically the opposite of looking rich, but that really isn't the case. The following items, unless they're part of your daily lifestyle or life setup, they can actually scream to the wealthiest of the wealthiest that maybe you're one of the poorest of the poor. From luxury brands such as Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Prada, Dolce Gabbana, Bulgari, etc. If you have any of these, it's typically understood that, okay, hey, maybe you're not so poor. On the flip side, the richest of the rich may look at this and be like, oh, okay, it's recognizable, it's a logo, we all know what it is, but is it really the cream of the crop? That's the question. A good analogy is, imagine you see someone with an iced out watch. And what that means formally is basically a watch with like a lot of diamonds encrusted on the top of it, on its like bezel basically. And that's not a diamond watch, by the way, this is a normal smartwatch. The point being, when it's basically fake diamonds, when they're not even real, and it's very obvious that it's not real, or even not, right? It's all about that demeanor, that character. When we typically think about, let's say, the richest of the rich, maybe it's some guy with simple clothes, but maybe the one thing that makes it super elegant, maybe that watch is $1.2 million, what have you. So the point here is, when it comes to fake jewelry or fake bling or fake type of just anything, and it doesn't mean you can't wear fake, but if you're wearing it to literally give off the image that, yes, I have money, then like literally that answers that. It means you don't have the real thing, but you want it so bad or you wish you had it, and you're going to be willing to wear that fake equivalent, but then in the end it's to portray what? Maybe status, maybe wealth, what have you. But basically at that point you're really not wealthy, you're maybe not rich, and you may be poor. So how looking poor can save us money through this manner is basically if you're just not spending on any of these things, whether they're fake, whether they're real. A good example is, hey, you want a polo t-shirt? Rather a polo with a collar. I basically used to go to the thrift store every single week on Tuesdays when it's already discounted and then be 50% off. And if I found, even if it was one of those polos with like a hole at the bottom where hopefully it's not really noticeable, it goes for $3. Back in the day it was $60 for a new t-shirt, or rather the shirt. And guess what? That was basically how I functioned in this similar fashion of, hey, like I wanted the logo, couldn't afford it. This was my means of doing it. Wearing that polo doesn't mean I was that poor. It also doesn't scream like I'm the wealthiest of wealthy, but it definitely says that, okay, I belong, let's say, potentially to a certain strata, if you want to call out the upper middle class. So simply put, I was basically doing the same thing where I couldn't afford the real thing. I was basically having the equivalent of it just to show off, like, oh, hey, like, check me out. I'm part of you guys. I'm also, let's say, if they consider themselves rich, then I'm rich. The funny part there is I'm actually able to save money because I'm not really spending it on the maximum retail price of said shirt or clothing or what have you. At the same time, the importance of looking poor and how it saves us money is basically, if you're just not buying, forget about just clothes and how it looks from the outside. If literally you don't care about society, if you think about it another way, then hey, you could be that person who, I have 9 shirts that are the same as this. And I also have other shirts, which are very similar as well, and a few pants that all look the same. So if you look at me and track me from afar, day to day, you may be thinking like, dude, this guy actually changed clothes. And I've gotten this remark from people that are close to me, like friends. In the general world, it looks like, as long as it looks clean, looks put together, what have you, then what's the problem with that, right? For me, that basically affords me a lifestyle that isn't really a big, high run rate or burdenful lifestyle where, maybe I'm buying clothes every single week, or hey, I got, it's fall time and the fashion is X, or it's winter now and I got to get this type of jacket with this type of shoes. I appreciate it. At the same time, it's not a metric for me, or I don't care as much as I did prior. So what that means, coming back to the whole not caring about what society cares about, it's basically, who says you're rich or poor? Like, if you really think about it, if I say, hey, you're so rich, you're so poor, what does that really mean? And if we're speaking purely financially, then it's just about what the black and white paper says. In other words, your net worth or your P&L, like your profit and loss. If you're making money, you're making money. If you're not, you're not. So what level and how poor are you compared to someone else, or how rich are you compared to someone else? It's basically all relative. The whole perspective of society and your status within society, it's basically an external kind of perspective. And another couple external perspectives in this manner of why it's important to look poor and how that affords us to save money are as follows. There's no need to keep up with the Joneses. This expression basically says, okay, hey, your neighbor got a new lawnmower, so you're like, oh man, I gotta get a new lawnmower. Oh man, look at my neighbor, he got this new car. Man, it's time for me to upgrade my car. Oh man, look at them, they got an RV. Maybe we should be thinking about getting an RV. So You don't need to do this whole like, catching up or keeping up with the Joneses, which is just colloquially your neighbors or people around you, or if it's coworkers or people you work with or people you do business with or otherwise. It saves you money because you're literally choosing not to spend it in order to catch up or keep up appearances with someone else. So if you are like that, where you have to be equivalent to somebody or better because it's ego driven or what have you, or scarcity driven because you just didn't have enough or not much growing up, and you're like, man, I really need to show off the fact that I got the sports class of this Toyota Corolla or Toyota Camry, but like in the end, it's a Toyota Corolla or Camry, beautiful car. At the same time, is it like a Benz or Maserati or what have you? It's really not. And on that same train of thought, another external perspective is going to be the simple sheer fact and famous line of comparison is the thief of joy. Essentially, when you compare, let's say, you're looking at my glasses. I used to look at people with these glasses. I was like, man, what nice glasses. I wish I had them one day. That's the thing. I wish I had them one day. Not, oh man, I don't have these glasses. My life sucks. Like I might as well go, just not be here. So it's not like that. But the point is, comparison is the thief of joy really means that if you really focus on everything that you just don't have, you're always going to compare. And some people, they get like trifled about things that they have more of. Like if you've ever heard of someone that says, man, I earn so much money, but I take on so much stress. I wish I could be like that guy who, maybe earning less and they have a whole lot of nothing going on. But it's just like the way that comes off is almost like they are taking this joy from them to actually put themselves to be in another person's shoes versus, just figuring out how they can optimize and do better and grow themselves and take away all their stress and anxiety and all these things. So it's all connected. But with that, let's keep it going. Flip it over to an internal perspective and coming back to that whole example where I have 9 of these shirts. They're beautiful shirts. Point is, when you think about that simple fact that basically everybody knows, like, oh my gosh, we make thousands of decisions each and every day. And that number is an average of 35,000 decisions each and every single day. When you break that down, that's not a joke. And that's like, if you spend 8 hours sleeping, good. That's a great amount of sleep. You should sleep because it's good for your health. But if you're awake, let's say a little more and you sleep less, sure, you're making less decisions per hour on average, but that's not the point. It's not that type of numbers game. It's about how crucial and quantitatively how important are said decisions. For me personally, I look at this like, okay, if I don't need to think about that shirt, that bottom, the socks, the footwear. I love to wear flip-flops in my daily life. I'm not a shoes wearer. I'll wear it for events and official things. But if I have a preference, I'll always be wearing flops, shorts, a shirt every day, like a t-shirt. And I explain all this because if you really think about it a different way, that part, just like how people meal prep on Sundays for the whole week where they don't need to think about, okay, what do I need to cook? Where do you want to eat, honey? What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? We haven't tried that. Oh, wait. Oh, man, they're closed. So like all of these things, like right there was like 5-10 decisions without even trying. And so the point is, when you're able to literally take away the time because you're automating things or automating the workflow, that means you basically freed up time to think about the next qualitative decision that can give you quantitative results. It's a cool line. If you look at advertising, media, or just movies in general as a holistic view, if you ever realize it, it's the stories that are told through movies that generally don't include, for the majority stake, at least in my experience, a bunch of, poor situations or where, let's say, the economy is not doing well and everyone's starving and, it's a dystopian society is sometime in the future, very realistic outcome anywhere. And currently they exist too, like people that are suffering. But in movies, they will literally just show kind of the cream of the crop. Look at this C-suite CEO kind of guy. Look at this, huge business owner that owns the whole thing and they are either the villain or the hero. And let's see, that underdog story of the person who has nothing who latches onto the person at the top and that type of story/arc. I learned a big lesson when I basically learned what I'm just about to tell you right now. I realized that people don't really want to see the same thing that they're experiencing. And that's at a very general level where, let's say, most people aren't, let's say, quote unquote, the happiest with their current situation. Let me explain. If we think about the average general person, they may, let's say, wake up, maybe they got a job they got to get to, they do their job, they come back, they got a few hours hardly to maybe they got to make dinner, they got to do some chore, they, have Netflix for an hour or like 1 hour of something, right? Hobby, what have you. Then they sleep, then they wake up and repeat it again. The weekend is pretty much filled with generally, let's just say, some type of event if they're trying to do it, or they say, oh, I stayed inside, I took some rest, I caught up on something, yada, yada, yada. So what does that mean? That means the average lifestyle, the way I described it, sounds kind of boring, for lack of a better term. Now, if you put that on the big screen, like that's cool. But if you look at any famous TV show, like Friends, or if you look at The Office or anything, it's about what's going on in that setting, or with Friends, there are different settings, but it's with that cast and crew. That analogy here is basically saying the people you surround yourself around are basically that fun fun time in friends at least. And in the office, it's the shenanigans that go on in the office. And it's hardly ever shown that, okay, hey, these guys are going out, bowling together and they're having dinner, and on the weekend they meet and they have a field day and they're playing sports. Like, that's not the focus. It's basically, when is that time in someone's day when there's the most fun per se, or the most fun happening. So in movies, all those like skydiving shots, hot air balloons, you're at the bar, you're having a drink, you're at the poolside, you're at some show and it's hilarious. The point is, no one's actually talking about the thing in general society, aka doing your job where you're trading your time for money as an hourly wage, or maybe it's a salary, it just depends. And they're not showing that part where you're productive for the economy and society. It's all about just portraying the fun part of daily living. This is important to digest, because if you understand it, then you also understand the inverse, which is basically that people, when you're looking poor, let's say, and how it saves you money, is you also don't attract the same type of attention. The reason all of what I said is so crucial is because if you think about it carefully, it's basically people wanting what they don't have. And the importance of looking poor, how it saves us money, is that people will generally associate with you, let's say, or me. Like, if I look just the way I am right now, right? Okay, these glasses are coming off a little like, all right, hey, wow, he has some class. Wearing a t-shirt, could be poor, rich, what have you. A smartwatch, a lot of people have a Apple iWatch nowadays, is a Samsung one. So what does all this mean? What this means is, I right now may be relatable, maybe not, maybe so. Maybe if you're wealthy, you may look at me and be like, okay, you know what? Maybe he put some product in his hair, he combed his hair before this video, maybe he's clean shaven, maybe I wonder what he smells like in terms of his aftershave. And if you're poor, you may look at me like, wow, I'm not saying you're poor, but you know what I mean, like not uber wealthy. It's basically looking at these glasses like, okay, maybe they cost a hot, amount, or maybe that hey, on Amazon you can buy them for $10 for these no power type of frames, right? And if I tell you they're Warby Parker, you may be like, wow, it's a little, middle class, upper middle class. So it's all perception, whether it's branding or otherwise. So the whole point of the example is, people want what they can't have. And so if we're talking, the assumption or hope is that I'm relatable to you and vice versa. So my words come off where if I was wearing a suit and tie and I tell you the importance of looking poor, like, cool, but are you poor if you wear a suit? Are you really that rich if you're gonna have to wear a suit? So it's kind of this like kind of gray area nuance. And the funny thing is, we're talking about stuff that society made up, and society talking about the thing that society made up that maybe our ancestors, aka previous society, made up. And so it's just funny how the world works. But with that, let's get on to our next point. The importance of being poor and looking relatable is that folks that actually associate with you probably are not going to be that much different from you. What that means is, it's probably not the most wealthy you're going to attract. There's no guarantee. It's not the most poor you're going to attract. No guarantee. But what that means is, people that are just going to vibe with you or chill with you or what have you. The point is, maybe your lifestyle doesn't really exponentially go up, like super expensive. And it's not like you're going to save the most amount of money if you're just hanging out a bunch of poor people, because in terms of saving money, the importance of looking poor here is that poor people probably aren't really going to deal with you. In general, if you look just like them, they'll hang out with you, but they may not need you or, forcefully want you because you have something to give to them. And on the inverse side, when you're super wealthy, chances are no one's asking you for, I need some change, I need some money, or otherwise. And I'm not saying poor people are like beggars in the situation. It's more of their algorithm title to explain basically the inverse of, why it's important not to look so rich. You attract the energy that you put out there. It means for our case is that basically, if you're not dressed to, wealthily or richly, which both of those are not words, that doesn't mean you're like looking like you have no money at all. You could just be like a simple normal person. And just like that, a simple normal person, aka the average, you're able to chill with the masses. You're not, getting too much attention on your eyes, or the inverse. And really, this same point brings us into how this makes us money. We've probably all heard of the phrase stealth wealth. And that's essentially saying, hey, like really well-off people dress really shabbily compared to others. Maybe they're wearing a hoodie and, they just look kind of, just cap, maybe some whatever sunglasses, because maybe they just don't want their identity out there, or they're just not really trying to show off. And so stealth wealth is basically a way to keep certain people away from, asking for a favor or for help or, for their support. This matters because we're all human, and within our human race, I would say communication is the most thing. That's the most important. Of course, I would scrub that sentence. The point is, if we're talking to each other and you understand me and vice versa, then there's hopefully something that we can gain value from each other from discussing, versus colloquially what it is with gossiping, which is just a bunch of nonsense, let's say, for lack of a better term. Do we learn things through gossip? Of course. We're still sharing information. How valuable is it in the marketplace or in your marketplace? If you're like a person who just does gossip blogs, like Gossip Girl or something, like great, right? Maybe that's the mark. Now I explain all of this because in the end of the day, what that really means is that if we want to spend time with each other, right? So you're spending time watching this video right now. It's basically all about sales. I'm selling you on the fact that I can tell you the importance importance of looking poor. And if you came this far in the video, I'm basically going to go around now how you can make so much more money, more than you can save. You're going to make so much more money by understanding why it's important to look poor. Essentially, think about a diagram where everything's related to each other, but how it's related is really going to break down through the following. We have two groups of people, and I'm making this super simple because there's a lot of nuance behind the whole spectrum. So I'm just going to say rich and poor, or poor and rich. Let's say I'm the poorest of poor. This is a real case scenario. If I'm in a community of other folks that are not that well off, what happens here is usually it's like, hey man, I'm hungry. I wish I could have an extra piece of bread. Or hey man, I wish I could have an extra half cup of milk. Now what this means is, this is literally just, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's this whole pyramid, which I'll put on screen. And that's its own explanation, which is its own video. But the understanding here is that you just, as a human, want your base needs sufficed, right? So if you think about like shelter, food, water, the basics. And at the very top, it's more about getting internal into our own head. So if you have all the money in the world, right? If you have like all the health in the world, you have all the time in the world. At the top, it's basically that like self-esteem, or basically the ego. It's basically around, okay, can you really be alone? If you have everything, but if everyone looks at you like you have everything, but they hate you, then psychologically, that may not be the pinnacle of the happiest individual. And so in this case, it's basically a bunch of folks that are basically, let's say, mingling with each other, talking with each other. They're at the bottom. Maybe they agree, wow, we'll never be at the top like those people. Or maybe they agree, man, I can't wait to get out of here. Let's figure out the next step to like work together and make it happen. So what that means is poor people, and I'm just going to call them poor and rich, just keep it simple. Poor people are meeting with poor people to do what? Either to just, be a part of the society that they are, just like at their level. Maybe are they really trying to sell each other and making money? A poor person trying to sell another poor person, if you've gone through the hustle, if you've gone through all the effort, all the energy to go make money, chances are another poor person may not really give another poor person money. But now if a rich person asks a poor person, think about it for a second. If someone who seems successful and they pitch themselves, regardless of selling every single poor person, but a good chunk, what happens? What happens is maybe they get sold. Maybe they believe that this person who's, above me financially figured out and that product or service that they have, could get me to that level, or maybe even way above that person, right? Is like the sell or the tactic. So what that means here is the importance of looking poor to make you money. It's almost like when you're selling to the poor as a poor person, you may not be able to get as much sales. It's really about perception, because at that strung, like the average mentality, the assumption, the stereotype is that, people don't know what they don't know. And so if you're not exposed to, oh, wait a second, I can be an influencer, I can rent a jet, I can lease a Lambo, I can get a Rolex watch just for, an hour or something for a photo shoot. And all of this can be rented or leased, or I can use, some type of way to borrow or, cheat people, unfortunately, in this world, right? To then get something and never even, need to pay for it. Like if you really think about it a different way. So the point is, making money and the importance of looking poor is that when you know that you look poor, you are probably not attracting a super wealthy, person or individual or party type of attention. And what that really means is you're also not really getting asked a lot by other poor individuals that are just around you for that much support or help or being fake. Because guess what? If you look poor, probably you have nothing to offer. And so if you have nothing to offer, you basically, you don't lose any money. And so how it makes you money is literally, if you have a lot and you look poor, you're not gonna lose what you already have. So we covered poor selling the poor. We also covered rich selling the poor. Now think about the inverse, the poor selling the rich. Here, I found something very interesting. The importance here of looking poor when you're selling the rich is that there are two types of rich, and I'll call them the self-made, and I'll call them basically, your family money. If someone's self-made, let's say they went from zero to hero, they kind of know the ups and the downs, the ebbs and the flows and all the stuff, and what it took for them to get from zero to hero. On the flip side, when you have a lot of family money involved or things just given to you, that's not bad or judgment. Some people call it privilege, all those things, right? But if you leave all the societal labels on it, right? Just look at a pure money-focused perspective. Somebody who was given everything on a silver platter, as many people say, there's a lot of strings attached, and that's not the focus of this video. But when a poor person talks to that type of individual, guess what? Typically speaking, that person, maybe their parents weren't around. Maybe they were raised by nannies or the help, as they say. Maybe they were always at a daycare. Maybe they were always in classes. They're, just anything but familial, or a feeling of, hey, this is my core family or my base or trusted individuals. If you know the formula where you could basically look poor, but give this person or individual time, attention, basically it's not money they're looking for or anything even close to it. It doesn't matter to them. So if you're gonna look poor in this case, then what happens is maybe they're open to you regardless regardless, because they weren't thinking, oh, someone's rich and poor. Yes, around them, certain people, they always look, pretty, let's say, well put together, just for an example. But they may entertain, your, just who you are, because it's not like, oh, weird, let me stay away from them. It's kind of like there's not really a judgment because they've already had everything from a money perspective. And as long as you're not cheated too many times, they're open to conversation. So here, there's a lot of people that may act a little like not from that cut of cloth, but they may dress also, kind of like they belong, but maybe they don't. And the whole point here is that you can basically sell individuals that are just in that situation because, for better or worse, they are willing to engage with you. And if you have something to sell that's of value, are they going to get cheated? Are they going to pay top dollar or more than that? Potentially, because at that level, it's like the value of each dollar, it's not really understood by each and every individual. And on the flip side, if you think about, okay, someone who is self-made and very wealthy, and then a poor person's trying to sell them, that's where, hey man, I was there. I know how it is. It's okay. I'm in sales too. We're good, It's almost like leveling with that person, like, dude, I know what you're trying to do. It's good. Let's just not do this. And so the importance here of making money is basically if you understand the dichotomy of, what type of person you're dealing with. And I'm not saying, selling is not bad. I think that itself should be its own video, because a lot of people just think, oh, selling is bad. No, man, we're all selling in this world. This camera, I bought it because it was sold to me as being a very great product. You hopefully are on this platform because it's such a great platform with so much information. So anyways, let's keep it going to the last section of people, the rich and the rich. There is so much to unpack here and so little at the same. When it's a rich person selling a rich person, the importance of looking poor in this case to make more money is astronomical. Just imagine, let's say, have, and you have immense net worth, and we both are talking level to level, man to man, hombre to hombre, person to person, whatever. Think about it. If I say, hey man, if we, flip this stock or flip this home, we could be making 300% ROI. If you really think about it for a second, if you have all the money that you need and want and more, and me too, why are we spending our time on even dealing with this situation? Unless if it's fun, part of a game, you love math, numbers, there's that angle, right? But for the average person, what I learned many years later in my life, I used to think, man, if you're really well off, like a billionaire or 100 millionaire, right? To me, I look at money as, ammunition to then take, a leap of faith towards a certain, investment. And it's not speculation, but, investments have their ups and downs. Like nothing's guaranteed. And so I always used to look at it like, wow, the more, bullets you have, the more chances you have, the probability of failure, it may be the same, right? But you can keep trying and then, eventually succeed. A real example is like Uber, considered a unicorn startup, like $1 billion valuation or more, and now it's a part of the S&P 500. Like if you tell someone back in the day, hey man, if you do, a dollar here, it's going to become this much tomorrow, whether that's Bitcoin or Tesla, it's different, right? Essentially, I learned that ultra high net worth individuals, it's not about making money, it's about wealth preservation. So it essentially sounds like, all right, if we're taking money off the table, but we're still talking about sales, like what are we actually talking about? What we're talking about is then power. We're essentially asking the question, which is more important, money or power? This is a very famous question, which the simple answer goes like, hey, if I have money, can't really buy power, but if I have power, I can earn a lot of money. So for our purposes, power and money, they're like the same thing in this discussion. So if money is equivalent to power as a currency, that's essentially what's being exchanged through this communication, versus another version of me wearing like, all the name brands, all the flashiness, all the things, right? Where like I'm basically sticking out, like not a statement piece. I am, the statement of, just a local area because I'm so dressed up or so put together in a different way. Now, if I'm very well, I'll tell you honestly, and maybe again, you already average of the 5 people you surround yourself around. So I've been very blessed to be surrounded by individuals like this growing up of all walks of life. And what I can say is, okay, that person either has all the time in the world to do what they're doing, and stress or not, they are happy to do what they're doing, right? And they're doing it, good for them. But it's almost like, all right, well, I'm going to leave them alone because I just don't identify with that type of person. Are they, maybe borrowed on debt to do, whatever they're doing? Maybe they're so wealthy, they have all the time and they're able to have fun by just doing this, right? So that is their situation, not mine. But because it's so different from mine, it's not relatable. It's basically something like they could have the best idea for my life and vice versa for them, but we just may not interact. And so the importance of looking poor here for making money is basically the ability to deal with with any strata and any type of person in the world. There's a reason why very wealthy individuals, they want to be like everyone else. Because think about it. If in the world officially they say there's 3,000 billionaires and whatever number of millionaires, compared to 8 billion people on the planet, that's pretty much just a few, from like minute percentage point of people in the world that can really understand you, relate to you, understand, taxes and stuff like that, which at that level, are you really looking at the books? Unless if that's your thing, you have someone who takes care of that. You have a family office. You have all these things, that just take care of your day-to-day life. And so a lot of people, maybe the consumption part is automated. It's easy, right? You're always getting fed. If you want to, drink water, drink whatever, you have things that are very easily accessible to you. And so the consumption, it's very easy to be a high consumer. And so that's why these individuals as well have a lot of time, but that time can be spent being degenerate, like more of the consumption behavior. But that's why you see a lot of wealthy individuals in the creation perspective as well, where maybe, yeah, sure, right? They may make abstract art and people are like, what is this nonsense? There's no creativity, there's no skill. But what's really happening is that, at least something productive, at least that they see or they say it has value, at least something good is happening in society. It's almost like saying, if all humans want the same thing of connection, do you hear me? Do you see me? Does what I say matter? These type of things. Then that all that means is like, if I'm at my pinnacle and I'm all alone, then I have no one to share it with. And if I'm at the bottom looking up, like, wow, my situation sucks. I'm the poorest of the poor and I'm only looking up. Guess what? The following happens. Both parties are really happy to mingle with each other because they don't understand each other. They cannot relate to each other's backgrounds. The poor person, they have nothing to lose and everything to gain in general. And the wealthiest person, let's say, have everything. But from an emotional perspective, they have everything to gain. Similar to the poorer person, financially having everything to gain. There's a lot of ways to save money. There's a lot of ways to save time. There's a lot of ways. And on a more personal note, I will say from my experience that the richest of the rich can be the kindest of the kind. And sure, they can also be the inverse if they're trying to keep on / hold on to everything that they've amassed over time. The poor of the poor, same difference. Desperation, you gotta do what you gotta do. But you also have nothing to lose and you have all the time to share with those around you. And they're also the most joyous of people in the world. So the importance of looking poor really is the importance of just knowing that we're all human. And depending on what you want out of life, you can get it. You can help someone while they're doing it. You can throw them down. You can pick up someone while they're getting to that next level, take them with you. You can also kick them down and keep going higher. And in the end, people only remember not really what you did, if you've heard that phrase. It's pretty much just how you made them feel. So with that, thanks for coming to the end. I'll leave a video of how to rise to the top 0.01% of your industry over here, and we'll see you there. Thanks for coming to the end.